Before we move on, I do want to make two things clear. One of them is that oral motor exercises are very helpful when used with the help and the guidance of an occupational therapist to address issues with sensory processing disorder, feeding disorders, and just coordination of the oral motor muscles. The second thing is whether these activities are going to be helpful or not for your child. Now, is your child an oral seeker? Meaning, are they putting things in their mouth all the time, looking for sensory input in their mouth? Another thing is your child showing difficulties biting and chewing on their food? Third thing, are you noticing any excessive drooling now that your child is done teething? Third is, are you noticing any sensory processing difficulties where they are showing more defensiveness towards flavors or textures of food? Now, if you have answered yes to one or more of these questions, then your child may benefit from these exercises. Now, if you are concerned of any eating difficulties or sensory processing difficulties, I highly suggest you contact your child's pediatrician so you could request an evaluation with an occupational therapist. Now, without further ado, let's get started with exercise number 1. The first exercise is simple. So anytime you give your child anything to drink from a cup, let's start incorporating more of straws, okay? That is going to bring a lot more coordination to the mouth muscles, okay? They have to close their mouth, seal their lips as they work on a more mature swallow pattern to bring liquid up through the straw. Now, things to keep in mind when using a straw is that the wider the straw, okay, so the bigger diameter of the straw, the easier it will be to use compared to a more narrow straw, okay? Another thing also is that if your straw is straight, it will be a lot easier to suck up liquids from there versus a curvy or silly straw. So I highly recommend getting some silly straws because you do want to increase the difficulty of this exercise for your children. Now, the second activity is drinking more frozen fluids through straws, meaning you could drink a milkshake, you drink a slushie with different straws. The hardest one is going to be narrow and curvy. So this is where you're going to end if your child is very strong and has good coordination of the muscles. Now, I typically just use the silly straws with baby Z because he is really good at sucking and closing his lips while he does that. So if you're starting to notice that your child is not able to keep the liquids in there when you're using a silly straw, maybe go down a notch and try something a little bit easier, and then you can come back to the hardest part, okay? Now, the third exercise is blowing off cotton balls or pom-poms. Now, you can place these light objects either on your hand or on the table and encourage your child to blow it off the table or off of your hand. You guys could do a race to see who blows it off first. Make it fun and make it interesting. You could spend as long as you want with this activity or as short as you want on this activity. Always follow your child's lead. Now, the fourth exercise does take a lot more coordination in your mouth muscles for it, but is really, really fun, and that is blowing bubbles. Now, in a cup, you put a little bit of water with a little bit of dish soap, and you have your child blow bubbles. As your child blows, the bubbles will come up and overflow the glass. Now, with this one, do take caution. If you try this with toddlers, maybe 2.5 and up, make sure that they know not to swallow the soapy water. They will learn. But one thing you can do is if you are using a plastic straw, you can open holes, punch little holes on the top of the straw. So as they're sucking up, it makes it harder for the fluid to come into their mouth, okay? Because they might suck instead of blow. The exercise is blowing, but sometimes that just gets triggered and they might start sucking. Things you can add to the solution are liquid watercolors or food colorings just to make it even funner and just add another level of enjoyment to your activity. Now, the fifth one is blowing a caterpillar. Blowing a caterpillar is really, really fun. I tend to encourage parents to race their child with it. So make 2 or 3 of these little caterpillars, have a finish line, and encourage them to blow the caterpillar past the finish line. Whoever wins gets a prize, or whoever wins, gets to dare the other person to do something. Keep it interesting and keep it age appropriate. But this is a really, really good one because you're encouraging a lot of the blowing and consistently. It's not just for a short period of time. Now, according to your child's ability to blow, that's what's going to determine how long or how far you make the finish line. And our last exercise here is the pick up cracker game. This one is also one of the most difficult ones, which is why I put it towards the end of the video. And this one you want to encourage your child to pick up either a pom-pom or a cotton ball or a Cheez-Its cracker by suctioning with the straw. So you position the straw over the cracker, you then suck up air. So in this case, we're not blowing, in this case, we're sucking. And then you have the suction of the straw against the cracker, and then you position it and let it go into a bowl right next to your child. Now, this one's going to depend. You could always make it easier or harder depending on what you're picking up. If you pick up a Cheez-Its, it's going to be one of the hardest things to pick up. If your child has a lot less strength or might be a little bit harder for him to do a Cheez-Its, you can do a goldfish or a little bunny cracker as well. And also just try a smaller pom-pom or cotton ball to just suck it up and release into a bowl. So just keep in mind that these exercises are good for building strength and coordination of the oral muscles, which are necessary for drinking, chewing, swallowing, and speaking. I hope you had fun. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Bye-bye.